Guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make warped rave music like Fjaak. As usual, you get the project file and the samples and the MIDI and presets and all that kind of stuff in this video in the description. So, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, we're going to restart this bitch. Hey everyone, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make warped rave music like Fjaak. As usual, you get the project file, samples, MIDI, presets, all that kind of stuff in this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it'll be available shortly. And yeah, let's get started. So, we're on 133 BPM. This is the loop you heard in the intro. And the first sound we have here is a string sample, which sounds like this. Basically what's going on here is I have a string sample. I'll show you the, here it is. It's just a sample of a string. I'll show you the original. It's just that in here. And then what's happening is I'm playing these chords with it. These like D sharp minor chords. And then you can see it bounces up and does like these little stabs up here with A sharp minor and then C sharp major. So I like doing this kind of technique. Basically what I was going for here was I was trying to make like a kind of ravey stab. If you've heard Fjaak's music, you know they use these kind of sounds a ton. And the thing with using a stab, what I'm talking about is like these kinds of sounds. All those kind of like old school ravey stabs that you hear a lot these days. The thing with using one of those is that you're locked into the chord that is in the original sample. Like if I bring up this landlord stab, for example. You can hear no matter where we go on the keyboard, it's not going to change. So we can't really play like a major or a minor chord. We can only play, in this case, a minor chord, which is cool. That definitely gives it the old school vibe. But I feel like to kind of take it into the modern day, you have to do a few different things. And this is one of them because with this, we can still get that stabby sound. Like that still has that very old school kind of like one-shot chord type of sound. It's just now we can play major and minor chords with it. And yeah, that's really the goal here. Is like I'm trying to get that type of sound. And really what causes that sound when you use a stab is you can see basically is because we're playing this same chord. And it's stretching out because it's audio. It's not like a synth where it will just be the same length every note you play. With audio, as you know, the lower you go, the longer the sample is, and the higher you go, the faster the sample is. And so yeah, we get this same kind of thing going on here. That's what gives it that more kind of like stabby vibe, even though we are playing chords with it. So yeah, and then for the sound on this one, like I said, it's the string sample. And then I have it going through a few effects. So I'll kind of just show you here, like from scratch, and then we can just go one by one and turn these all on. So here's what this sounds like with no effects. So yeah, and one thing you'll notice here also is that I took the start time and dragged it back a little bit. This is just because, you know, strings tend to have a little bit of an attack to them, as you can hear there. And I just wanted this to like hit right away. But yes, this is what it sounds like with no effects. The first effect we have here is this chorus, which sounds like this. So you can hear this is subtle. It's just giving it a bit more kind of like dimension and space. It helps to give it a more like old school kind of like warpy sampled feel. After that, I have a bit of echo. And what I'm doing with this is just dotted eighth notes. You can hear what that's doing there. It's kind of like giving it more of like an interesting rhythm. Yeah, after that we just have a little bit of reverb. You can see it's set like this. Pretty simple stuff there. So then I have all of that going into the Saturator, which sounds like this. You can hear this is what's really giving it that kind of like crunchy, sort of like distorted texture. Basically what I have here, as you can see, I have the drive up a bunch, and then I have the wave shaper down here. And I've turned up like this bass frequency and all of these settings here. And you can hear it's just crunching all of this reverb and delay and the sound and the chorus. And that's what gives it the cool texture. So this is really important for the style. We're going to talk about this more as I go through. But yeah, the texture is so important for the sound. And this is how you kind of get that distortion with a little bit more control that allows you to make, a more detailed and nuanced sound like this. As opposed to, just putting like an overdrive or like an amp on here. So after that, I have a little bit more delay. I just have this echo here. You can see it's just doing eighth notes. Adding a little bit more space there at the end. And then the last thing we have here is this EQ8 just cutting out some low end. That is it for the string stab. Next thing we have here is this 303, which sounds like this. Basically, it's just playing at the end of every 2 bars. It's kind of like a little bit of musical punctuation, so to speak. And yeah, and then for the notes on this one, basically, it's actually just playing D sharp. That's the key word in D sharp minor. Just plays D sharp, and then another little D sharp there, and then it slides up to D sharp an octave up. So then, for the sound on this one, I made this using Operator. It's a pretty simple sort of like 303 sound. You can see we just have a saw wave here, and I just have this going through a bandpass filter with a pretty high resonance, and then we have an envelope on there as well. And then you can see I'm automating the filter frequency. So this is pretty important for these kind of sounds, to really make it feel like alive and more like a realistic analog 303. You need to constantly be moving the filter frequency whenever it's playing. So yeah, just like simple automations like this definitely make a big difference there. After that, you can see I just have a bit of echo. I've got this actually doing dotted to 16th notes. I thought it sounded kind of cool. It's a bit different from anything I would usually use. And it gives it a really cool kind of like analog feel as well. I feel like the delay being a little bit weird there is a nice thing for the texture. After that, you can see I have the Saturator, which is doing quite a bit of drive. Here's without it. This was really giving it the 303 sound. I got the drive up a bunch, got the bass frequency up a little bit on the analog clip. After that, I just have this drum bus, so here's without that. And with it, you can hear it's just kind of fattening everything up a little bit. And then the last thing that we have here is just an EQ8 cutting out the low end, and that is it for the 303. Then the next thing we have here is this hi-hat, which sounds like this. This is a really simple analog style hi-hat. Basically, the drums are kind of made up of 3 layers. We have, like for this style, we have the kick, we have a breakbeat, and then you can hear those are a bit, like they don't really have that sharp high end, so then we have the hi-hat. Bringing it in, and so that's what this is doing. It's just meant to be a bit of high end there for the drums, and it also kind of adds more intensity as well. Like you'll hear if I turn it off. It definitely makes the beat, or like the drums, and the overall track really feel a lot more like high energy and intense. So all this is doing is just playing 16 notes, and then I have this little hi-hat that I made in Operator. And what it is it's just some white noise here with a bit of an envelope on it, going into a bandpass filter, and yeah, that's really it. And then the key here to get the more like analog sounding hi-hats is just to give it a lot of resonance. Not like too much, but about there is good. You can hear if I turn it off, it sounds a lot more like a melodic techno track or something like that. When we turn it up, it has more of that old school kind of like 808 or like 606 hi-hat type of sound. And yeah, that's it for the hi-hat. Next thing we have here is the kick, which sounds like this. Basically what this is it's a standard sort of like techno rumble kick, and then it's just a little bit more dirty than you would usually want in like more standard techno tracks. So here's what this sounds like without any of the processing on it. You can hear, basically, it's just this big kick sample. Not really a whole lot to that. Pretty simple. Just like any kind of big sort of like techno style kick like this. Like any kind of kick you could find in a techno sample pack will probably work for this style. But yeah. Or this one if you want to get the project file in the description, julianearl.bandcamp.com. But yeah. After that, I just have a bit of saturation, just kind of beefing it up a bit. Here is without that. And with it, so you can hear this just kind of takes it. I feel like this is the thing that kind of takes it from just being a sample, like in a sample pack, to being like in the project file, It's giving it that extra boost to really bring it forward in the mix. After that, we have this audio effect rack, and what we're doing with this is just making a rumble kick. Like I said, this is a standard techno kick. So what we have is we have a dry chain, and then we have the rumble chain. And then we're just kind of blending them together. And the way we make the rumble here is basically we have this reverb. going into an amp, which you can hear has a lot of, kind of adds a lot of low end to the reverb. And then that is going into a low pass filter. And then we also have a side chain to the dry kick. But then when you layer that in with the dry kick, there we go. We get a nice rumble. And so this is often the bass in Fjaak's tracks and in a lot of other like producers in the style. This is what a lot of people do. Like the kick and the bass are kind of one thing. And this is how you do that, is by making this sort of thing. Like I said, it's not that complicated. You just make an audio effect rack, 2 chains. One is the dry chain, one is the rumble chain. Blend them together, and you should have it. Like I said, if you want to get this one, all of that is in the description. Anyway, after that we have this drum bus, just kind of beefing it up at the end of the chain. You can hear this is kind of adding a bit more fatness. And the last thing we have here is this EQ8. So here's without this and with it. So you can hear what this does is it just kind of gives us a more focused sound. I'm kind of boosting the low, well, I am boosting the low end quite a bit, because again, this is the bass in the track. And then I'm cutting around here because there's usually a lot of muddy frequencies with these rumbles. So I like to kind of cut out around like 200 hertz to clean that up. And then we just have a little bit of a high end boost just to kind of bring out the click. So again, without it and with it. So that's the thing that really takes it and like focuses it. And yeah, that's it for the kick. So the last drum that we have here before I show you the group processing is the breakbeat, which sounds like this. And the way that I made this was basically by taking this drum and bass break, which you can hear. This isn't like a think break or an amen break or anything like that. This is what I guess you would call like a compound break. Basically, this is just some sample that's been through like a million different sample CDs, a million different people's hard drives. It's been exported through samplers, like just over the years. Like that's the kind of samples you want to look for. Basically, it's like, you know, something like that where it's not so much like a particular break. Like I said, you can't really pick. I mean, I guess I can hear a little bit of like a Fool's Gold break in there and like some other ones, but it's really mostly just like a lot of different things put together. And then what you want to do is just take those, use the texture that's already there, and kind of bring it into your own thing. So that's what I've done here. As you can see, I've chopped this up. So here's like the original pattern for the break. I also slowed it down a little bit, obviously, to fit this tempo. And yeah, so that's the original pattern. And then what I did was I just chopped it up and made it go like that. So it's more kind of like 4 on the floor to go with that kick. But yeah, so this is kind of a common technique Fjaak uses. Again, a lot of other producers are doing this right now as well. Just kind of taking a break like this where it's not so much of like an obvious think break or an amen break or anything like that, but something where you can tell like it's a lot of different samples. Again, it's probably been exported to MP3s like a million times over the years. It's probably been, you know, put through a few samplers, all that kind of stuff. And you just take all of that and bring it into your track and kind of expand upon it and use it for your own purposes. So yeah, so let's have a few effects on here. I'll show you. Here's what it sounds like dry. And then with the effects. So I just have this drum bus here first. This is just giving it, you know, a little bit more texture, kind of beefing it up a bit. You can hear the difference there. And then we just have the EQ8, which is just cutting out some low end and then giving it a bit of a high end boost as well. Kind of similar to the kick. I feel like this is the thing that really focuses it into sounding like how I want it to. So then on the drum group, I have a bit of processing as well. And this is what's really making everything have that kind of like crunchy texture where it all feels really cohesive and kind of more together than just like some dry drums being played together. So this is what you've heard so far. Here is with no processing. You can hear without the processing, it's really missing something. Like it doesn't have that cohesive kind of feel. It's not really that, you know, it's not really that tight sounding. Like everything feels kind of like with the processing, it just really helps again to glue it all together. Again, like without it, like I'm saying, like it just really doesn't feel as cohesive. It doesn't have as much texture. Yeah, you really need to do this kind of stuff with your drums. And it's not hard. Like I said, it's basically the 3 main elements for these type of breaks. You get like a hi-hat, a kick, and then a breakbeat. And then these things are what gives it like just a little bit more oomph on top. So I'll kind of go from the ground up here. So first thing we have here is this drum bus. And you can hear with that when we turn it off and then turn it on, this is just kind of helping to make everything a little bit closer, sonically speaking. Like It gives it a bit more texture. It also kind of fattens everything up a little bit. And I find drum bus is a really good way to kind of bring everything together. Like, it's almost like the way you would use a compressor to kind of even out the volumes a little bit more. I feel like, again, without this and with it, like, it just feels a lot more cohesive. So yeah, that's the first thing. After that, I have the Saturator, which sounds like this. You can hear that's doing like the last little bit of it. I just have to drive up a bit, and I've got the analog clip down here. Even when you don't have any of these knobs engaged, it still is doing something, because you'll hear if I turn the color off, it's very subtle, but it is changing the texture of the distortion a little bit. But yeah, so you see I just have to drive up a bit there. It's just giving it that extra little bit of crunch that like really, really glues everything together. Like if I turn this distortion way up, you'll see. Like that kind of thing, that is what saturation and distortion does. Basically, it kind of helps to like glue things together and like crunch them together. And so if you use that, but on a much smaller level, basically by turning the drive way lower than I had it a second ago, you get that same kind of like crunching together, like gluing together kind of effect, but it's just more subtle. Like it's more listenable, basically. But yeah, so that is pretty much it for this one, guys. This one's been getting requested a ton, and I wanted to turn it out for you guys. So that's it for today, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video, as well as subscribe, and hit that little notification bell. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments as well. Let me know who you want to see me do next. As always, you get the project files, samples, MIDI, presets, all that kind of stuff right at the top of the description. So make sure to check for that. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because the files will be available shortly there. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.